All right. Hello, hello, hello. I am Jayme CheeseSlice, the engineer and producer of Uncontrolled Opposition. Today, we're going to be talking about weather weaponization and the floods that occurred in Texas recently. And that's going to be with Celia Farber. But before we get to that, let's bring on Gloria and Jayme. How you guys doing today?
Hey, Jayme. Hey,
Uh,
Jeremy.
All right. So if you've never watched the show before, this is actually a radio program, and we are recording it live on YouTube. And it's going to be about an hour, and you'll get to see us do this uncut before we put it on the radio for people to listen to. So let's go ahead and bring on our guest, and then we'll get the show started. And Gloria's going to take it away from there. Hello, Celia. How are you doing?
Hey, Celia.
Hello. Hi,
Hi.
Jake, Gloria, and Jeremy. Nice to be back with you. Gloria, I love that color on you. That's
Thanks. We're the Hollywood Squares today. Do you
It's
remember that
very,
show?
very good to see you again. So, Gloria, it's time for you to take over. So let's do it.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to Uncontrolled Opposition, where together we battle mind wars with truth strikes. No, you haven't misdialed. We were formerly left on left. I'm Gloria Guillo, and I'm here today with my co-host, Professor Jeremy Kuzmarov. Today, we are pleased to welcome back our friend and guest, investigative journalist Celia Farber. Mark Crispin Miller calls Celia Farber's work journalism at its best. And Bob Guccione Jr., Spin Magazine's publisher, describes Celia's writings as groundbreaking. We agree with them and are thrilled she will talk with us about weather weaponization. The opinions you hear are ours and our guests, not those of WBAI, the Pacifica Foundation, or the Progressive Radio Network. Our content is intended for informational and educational purposes only, not professional, medical, or legal advice. Listeners are encouraged to form their own opinions. As you know, dear viewers and listeners, America is underwater. In just 3 days in July, the United States experienced what meteorologists called an unprecedented series of 1,000-year floods, flooding Texas, North Carolina, New York, and New Jersey. While we've been told that weather can't be weaponized, that storms are too vast and chaotic to harness, and that divergent claims are nothing but science fiction, former President Lyndon Johnson boldly stated in 1962 that he who controls the weather controls the world. And history backs up Johnson. In the 1960s, the United States military launched Operation Storm Fury, openly attempting to weaken hurricanes by seeding them with silver iodide. At the same time, Vietnam Project Popeye used cloud seeding to extend monsoon seasons, flooding the Ho Chi Minh Trail, a climate tactic in active warfare. This was no fringe experiment. These were military operations with real targets, results, and consequences. By 1976, the world took notice. Fearing the destabilization potential of environmental warfare, the United States drafted and adopted NMOD Convention, a treaty banning the military use of environmental modification techniques when their effects would be widespread, long-lasting, or severe. Earthquakes, hurricanes, droughts, floods, all were listed as potential threats of deliberate human manipulation. Yet decades later, the most advanced atmospheric research facility in the world, HARP, in Alaska, emerged under the joint sponsorship of the U.S. Air Force, Navy, and DARPA. We talk a lot about DARPA on the show. DARPA is the U.S. Department of Defense's research and development arm for high-risk, high-reward technology. HARP means high-frequency active auroral research program. HARP's stated mission is, these words are killing me, isospheric research, but its immense power and classified operations fueled global suspicion. Its high-frequency transmissions could, in theory, heat targeted sections of the upper atmosphere, altering jet streams, disrupting satellite communications, or worse. And HARP isn't alone. Across the United States, a network of more than 160 high-powered Doppler radar stations called NEXRAD became the quiet backbone of weather surveillance. Officially used to monitor storms, some researchers believe this system, when pulsed in sequence, could subtly steer moisture, suppress rainfall, or redirect storm paths. The line between observation and manipulation blurs. And then came the floods. In April 2024, Dubai was hit with its worst flood in modern history, over 10 inches of rain in a single day, more than a city typically receives in an entire year. The storm brought the city to a standstill. Highways submerged, the airport paralyzed, and infrastructure overwhelmed. Officials were quick to deny any connection to cloud seeding, despite admitting cloud seeding flights had occurred just days before the deluge. Similar catastrophic deluges also hit Turkey, China, and parts of the Persian Gulf during spring and summer of 2025. These weren't random anomalies. They formed a pattern, coordinated, systematic, global. In the U.S., Central Texas took the hardest hit. Over 18 inches of rain fell during the July 4th weekend. The Guadalupe River surged 26 feet in under an hour, claiming lives at private Camp Mystic, where 27 girls and counselors, daughters of oil executives, politicians, and legacy families, perished. Suddenly, corporate media took notice. This wasn't a trailer park or a low-income neighborhood swept away in silence. This was elite tragedy. And it mattered, not because the deaths were more painful, but because the victims were better connected. The same floodwaters that ravaged working class areas of Houston, Appalachia, and New Jersey barely registered a headline. But when wealthy white children drowned at a 7,600 per session Christian girls' camp, it became a national reckoning. Congress held hearings. FEMA reviewed protocols. Protesters marched in Washington demanding change. Where was this energy when mobile homes were submerged, when the poor rebuilt alone? And still, no one asked the question behind the curtain. What's driving these patterns? Are these atmospheric anomalies natural chaos or engineered outcomes? After the 2010 Haiti earthquake, Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez accused the United States of tectonic weapon pointing to HARP. Russian military sources echoed the claim, warning of a new class of geophysical warfare. Later, the United Nations, Russian officials issued direct cautions about the U.S. developing technology to induce earthquakes, alter weather patterns, and weaponize national disasters. Despite the NROD convention, enforcement is non-existent. No inspection regime, no penalties, just language. While dual-use technology advance in the shadows, dual use is a civilian component and also a military component. If weather can be used to destroy crops, destabilize regions, displace populations, or cripple economics, why wouldn't it be weaponized? And those in power deny it so forcefully. Why have they spent decades building the tools that do exactly that? In the 21st century, war doesn't need to look like tanks and uniforms. It might look like a flood, a blackout, a hurricane in slow motion, or a pattern of chaos that targets some but spares others. According to Dane Wigington, Texas cloud seeder Rainmaker and Augustus Doricko is just a patsy. Lee Harvey Oswald 2.0. He believes this is a mass distraction from the real military-grade weapon systems at play in the Texas floods. And not only just Texas, but also New Mexico, North Carolina, Oklahoma, etc., all happening simultaneously. Maybe it's time we stop dismissing weather weaponization as conspiracy theory and start calling it what it increasingly appears to be: classified reality with class selective consequences. And sadly, it's all being concealed under the propagandized threat of CO2 driven climate change, which is now being conveniently organized by the predator class to justify restricting our travel, increasing our surveillance, and providing less development for Africa, while they themselves jet set around attending exclusive think tank meetings like Davos and Bilderberg. Celia, please tell us what you think about Peter Thiel funded 25-year-old Augustus Doricko and his cloud seeding company, Rainmaker. Is Doricko a Manchurian candidate and a diversion, or did he do it? Thank you.
What a great introduction, Gloria.
It's a long one. I'm glad it's over. It had a lot of tongue twisters.
You put a lot of work into that. Yeah. I don't know. You know, in a way, this is one of those, when I posted about Augustus Doricko, the post went viral. I was very surprised. I cover a lot of bases at my Substack, and all of a sudden I became the source, you know, just in that little frame of time. A lot of people were linking to that story. All I did was followed, you know how you do, you jump around, you follow some things, and I was struck immediately by it seemed to me like he was a character, really a character, with his presentation, with his, sorry, what's the word I'm looking for?
Mullet.
Thank you, mullet. And what did I think?
You had some great quotes about the mullet.
Yeah, my headline, my subhead was, "No longer can you trust a mullet." Right? There used to be that if somebody had a mullet, like that wasn't one of the elites trying to kill you, right? Because hair is one of the many ways that the weaponization of everything gets expressed. It's hair, it's clothes, it's everything. So that's, you know, that's my kind of pet obsession, is what's being communicated through these characters and their presentation. So I've been listening to him, you know, get in preparation for this show. I listened to his interview with Glenn Beck. That was today, actually. He comes across very, first, like in his first sentence, he says, Glenn Beck says, "So what is cloud seeding, and did you cause the flood in Texas?" And first sentence is, "We didn't do it. We didn't do it." It's very defensive. I mean, the whole conversation has become absurd. So Glenn Beck says, "Well, when did you actually see it?" "Well, it was 2 days before." And then he's describing how, you know, it was only these two little clouds. So I absolutely cannot say whether he caused it. And I didn't say that in my post. But I find it extremely bizarre that he is so, I don't have the number in front of me, but he's a very super funded Peter Thiel protege. He's 25. And there's pictures of him with Bill Clinton at the White House. Something is going on here. It makes no sense. 25. And Gloria, you know, I have a son. You have, I'm not sure how many sons. Two sons. Do you remember when they were 25? You know, it's like, and I think he didn't finish college. So maybe that's actually the condition for getting Peter Thiel money. So I'm perfectly happy to say that, yeah, perhaps he was scapegoated. Perhaps I was even part of drawing too much attention to him in the beginning there. He's not the story.
Well, I think you outed him as a like a Manchurian candidate also. In the sense that you were looking at his demeanor and you were looking at his clothes.
Right, exactly.
And
yeah, I don't know if I would say Manchurian. Yes. Okay. So yeah, I use phrases like monarch mind control, because I'm always looking at how they use different things to cast spells, to make us suspend judgment, to make us make associations, to make us think that's a good guy, that's a bad guy. And this one really threw me for a loop, right? Because he's so young and he presents very shaggy, but it's almost like he's mocking a trailer park guy. And he had this, really seemed like it was central casting, mocking Jesus, t-shirt, mocking, like, in other words, it felt to me like he was mocking Christianity based on his t-shirt. So it was this, you know, very garish looking Jesus on his t-shirt. And then it turns out he has a poster that says something, Jesus died for our zins, Z-Y-N-S, the tobacco pouches. So when I see stuff like that, I just suspect that they're programming the presentation. This is really hard to explain. That the presenter is programmed. Now I could be wrong. It could be I just cannot understand why he's dressing up like that, almost like in a high school play, right? And why he's doing these things. But then when you listen to him on like Glenn Beck, he's after my piece. I don't know if it was to do with my piece. It seemed like his PR campaign became all about, I love God, I love Jesus, I'm a devout Christian, and God created everything, and we're just stewards of the planet, and we only flew up with a little, he calls them Skittles. He calls them which is also, I'm paranoid.
Skittles.
But Skittles is also a thing with the mind control people. I'm sorry, it just is. They Skittles is one of the ways. I know I sound completely mad, but okay, trust me on that for now. Skittles is one. So he uses the word Skittles to describe the size of what they dropped in those just two clouds 2 days before the big flood. He said it was only 2 clouds. We seeded 2 clouds and they dissipated. And this really weird moment, Glenn Beck says, so did it produce rain? And he just says something like, yes. And then they move on. So as usual, we're left trying to pull apart and make heads or tails of something that all we know is it's weird. It's a little bit psychedelic. It's a little bit surreal. Like, this guy is 25. It's a private company. He was kind of generated in the Peter Thiel, genius factory. He's got his mullet. He's got his mocking Jesus gear. And
he's a good-looking kid.
Yeah. And he's an apostle for this stuff. He really believes in it. And I don't know if you've had a chance to look at the website, the Rainmaker website, because I have this sensitivity for what I call monarch mind control. When I look at that website, I see a lot. It can be the font. It can be I just know it when I see it.
Let's back up for a second. Jayme, could you just tell us what the Monarch mind control program is? It's part of MK Ultra. A little bit about it.
I'm not familiar with that. Monarch specifically.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I can
Celia, run with it.
Yeah. It's a sub program of MK Ultra. So MK Ultra is more the hardcore scientific splitting of the mind, creating false memories, erasing memories, creating split identities, creating, sex kittens, slaves, and all these, and Manchurian candidates and all this kind of thing. Monarch mind programming is more like it spreads out all through the culture, and it's in popular culture. It's in the music we hear. It's in the imagery. It's in the Olympic Games ceremonies, and it's full of Masonic symbolism and Masonic color, form, symbol, and sigil weaponization. And once you start to study monarch mind control language, suddenly, black and white checker floors don't look innocent anymore. Or even you see somebody wearing stripes. You go, oh, is that stripes, or is that like monarch mind attack stripes? And of course, as soon as you start to talk like this, you sound a little mad.
Well, just to take a step back, I mean, the Mad Men, the advertising industry, which came out of Tavistock, and
Right.
The original people who had it understood that you could drive people to make decisions based on subliminal messaging.
Thank you.
So that comes right out of the psychology schools.
Absolutely. And
it works. People buy, the Fritos. If they like the commercial, it gets in there, and they have a jingle. and repetition. We always see repetition as being a factor of brainwashing.
Right, exactly. What I noticed with Augustus Doricko, and I've been meaning to study his name. What is up with this name Doricko? Has anybody? I don't know. I don't want to pick on this kid. I do feel a little bad, but I'm kind of morbidly fascinated. Like, who is this kind of culture? And suddenly he became like a protected child almost. A lot of people were taking them on all sides, left and right, under their wing, saying, "Oh, you're being blamed. It wasn't your fault, was it? Now tell us about it." Right? And that kind of distracted from the moment, which I think, for example, Marjorie Taylor Greene and others are talking about. Kind of leave aside that guy, but why don't Americans know the basics about what gets called self-approvingly weather modification, right? And maybe people like us would more call it weather manipulation. So a lot is in for the one that really disturbs me is which I associate very much with Bill Gates, that pretty much to me, he's the Antichrist. Solar radiation management, dimming the sun, allegedly to cool the planet. So all of these weapons, COVID, vaccines, they all lock in, and they are, as Dane Wigington always says, they are arms of the octopus that is about depopulation.
I think it's interesting that he didn't come out. I didn't hear this. Maybe you did. He didn't come out about Nexrad or about HARP. He was silent on that. He just basically saying, "I didn't do it," but he's not pointing any fingers, which is, telling.
Wait,
I mean, certainly Oswald. I'm saying the kid.
Right.
Augustus. He's not saying I didn't do it, they did. And if you notice with most patsies, and Jayme could, probably speak on this, patsies don't tend to say who did it. They'll just at best deny that they did it, that they don't remember or they don't recall, or,
But why is a 25-year-old doing any of this? Flying it's all bananas, isn't it? With no oversight from the government. All of this is new to most Americans. Would you agree that? Yeah. I think the thing about the thing about Augustus is it's so weird. So the people who do all, whether it's cloud seeding or much more so what we call chemtrails, though Dane Wigington says we shouldn't call it that. We should call it by the official name. What is the official scientific term?
Contrails?
No, there's another name, because if you say chemtrails, that's already branded at conspiracy vibes. But all the people who fly all the planes doing all the weird
cloud seeding
stuff, they're gagged. They've signed, they can't talk. So do you know that? They're not allowed to talk. They're not allowed to say. So all of a sudden, this kid comes out, and I sometimes wonder if what they do is they put forth somebody like that just to create a false binary. Did the kid have something to do with it, or didn't he? Is he being falsely accused by the terrible, terrible conspiracy theorists? And then everybody interviews him, and he's smooth and adorable, and he says he's a Christian, and then everything just kind of goes away down the drain, and we have no idea what we're talking about anymore.
It's kind of like a smokescreen. Do you remember the 80s? I do very well. And in the 80s, it was kind of an innocent time. The 70s and the 60s had a lot of protest, had a lot of movements. The 80s was the era of greed is good on bumper stickers. It was the era of the .com, the era of young people realizing how much they loved capitalism and making their own businesses. So I think in some way his costuming, and let's call it what it is, it's costuming.
Thank you.
I think
Yeah.
his costuming is a throwback to this kind of more friendly era of more innocence, less
It's
pushback.
disarming. Yeah, it's disarming. Yeah. But he's also dressed up, let's face it, like central casting MAGA. Like what Hillary would call a deplorable. Except he doesn't look like that. He looks like he's dressing up like that. You see what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. No, there's some messaging going on there that I think is to disarm us. And the fact that he's not calling out other weaponization things, he's just remaining silent on that, saying, hey, I didn't do it. It was too big for me. I couldn't have done it. I just, did a little thing. And then, Jeremy's been very quiet on the show, but what we see, Jayme and I see very often is the CIA, and the deep state. They just don't go out and do something. They love plausible deniability, and they love to use red herrings, and they love to flood the zone with information so that, people are so confused that you can't kind of just plow through it and see what's going on. And I think in this sense, to me, it does seem very likely that he is a diversionary tactic. Now, yes, he did do something bad, but was it, how many inches was that? Was it like 16 inches bad, or was it 4 inches bad? Did somebody else come along and make it exponential and drive it home to the other point? So we're left questioning that. And I think, what we've discussed a lot on the show is these deep state ops don't necessarily want to convince us of some alternate truth. They just want to muddy the tracks so that we just throw our hands up and say, I don't know.
Yeah. Remember Katrina? Everybody remembers Katrina. I don't know how many days, when they evacuated. What's up with these storms that come in a matter of hours and nobody can see them? Or because he admits he was cloud seeding 2 days before, right? Why didn't
NextRed, 160 high-powered Doppler radar station. Where the hell was NextRed? Unless NextRed was doing something.
Where is anything? It's like 9/11, right? When every single system we were indoctrinated to believe was in place to protect us. I mean, staying for a moment within the official absurd story. You're part of the mind control is you're supposed to accept that it didn't work, but there's nothing anybody could have done for all these hundreds of billions of dollars. But then when you ask, why wasn't anything functioning? You're always guilty of asking the wrong question from the wrong place, because that's part of the browbeating and the gaslighting we always get. It's very sensitive what you're allowed to say and not say, right? Well, and so he became one of the points of sensitivity.
Well, in 9/11, I'm glad you made that parallel. In 9/11, you had NORAD, and NORAD stood down. Our protective, field in the United States, they were having a drill on the same day. And, which is seriously, folks, NORAD is having a drill that planes are hitting the World Trade Center while planes are hitting the World Trade Center. And we have this.
Come on, Gloria. That's not strange at all.
So there we had NORAD. Here we have NextRad. Where was NextRad? Where were these 160 high-powered Doppler radar stations, which are the quiet backbone of weather surveillance? Where the hell were they?
But then you hear about it's always something new, right? Like, oh, well, these are storms called, and they named this thing, this something new. I wish I had it in front of me. They always come up with a new exotic name of something nobody's ever heard of to shame you so that you don't.
It was the
yeah, the blah, blah, blah. And to beat us with sticks, like, how dare you? And when a lot of people have just died horrifically, and children and all of this, we all get flooded with guilt and shame and fear of saying the inappropriate wrong thing, and they exploit that to the max, always.
Yeah, I have a couple questions, maybe. Thanks. It's an interesting discussion. Yeah, I never thought that much about these weather events in the way you're describing. So it's eye-opening, some of the things you're saying. A couple questions. I mean, one is related to the issue of climate change. I mean, they used to never mention climate change, and then in the last 10 years, now every time there's a storm, that's the first thing they say, climate change. And so how do you assess that?
I don't consider that there's one iota of scientific truth in the climate change juggernaut. The juggernaut and money laundering and depopulation scam that I spent decades on was HIV/AIDS. And you can just do an overlay between that one and climate change. So I can't break it down scientifically why exactly all the reasons it's false, but most of us are familiar with the basic ones. You just touch it and it's false. It all falls apart. But they're not wielding it as a scientific thing. They're wielding it as a religious thing, that if you don't fear and quote unquote fight climate change, you're one of the bad people. But these are all rafts to bring in the basically Agenda 2030, all the New World Order agenda, and it all interlocks. So for me, there's no longer any reason to try to give the benefit of the doubt to the climate scare crowd, because to the last man and woman, they are part of these globalist foundations raking in, billions of dollars and scaring people out of, there's entire generations who don't want to have children, aren't going to have children because they don't want to bring. So it's always striking the same notes on the instrument, on the, let's call it a violin, a piano, a violin, whatever instrument you want. It's always the same notes. It's like really bad things are happening. The world is a really dangerous, horrific, terrible place. Scare. So people get so demoralized. It's vaguely all of our fault. None of the matrix of institutions put in place who have been getting millions and billions or more from these industries that have been quote unquote fighting this or supposed to understand all this stuff for decades. None of them can ever do anything except put out another, character like a Greta Thunberg to shout at us. But it's not clear, what did we do? So it's always like the guilt trip and the lack of clear information, and the main way that that it's a psyop is through the guilt trip. But I think with climate change, they do seem to have backed off some. The climate always changes. Climate is cyclical. Most people in the know understand that the thing to fear, if you want to be afraid of something real, is the pole shift, which none of us can do a damn thing about. The cataclysmic pole shift, the magnetic poles are demonstrably moving, and those happen on a cyclical schedule, and we're due for one. And when it comes, it will kill a lot of people. It's that simple.
When I was a kid, I remembered someone telling me that at some point the sun, I think, was going to explode. I'm not sure about that anymore, but when I was a kid, I was told that. And I was very concerned as a child. I was like, oh boy, in a billion years, the sun's going to burn out and explode. I mean, the thing is, we have to worry about what's in front of us. And when we go into these, it's the climate change, it's CO2, it's this, it's that, and the other thing, it directs us in another direction. And I had written an article a few years back on carbon capture. And in it, I really looked at the argument of CO2, and I found it to be not very compelling. And I brought in some scientists, rocket scientists, and had discussions with them and attended some seminars and things like that. And really, CO2 is not the culprit. So,
No, of course not.
So what kind of turned out is that these things are really diversionary tactics. I mean, you have a whole children, kids, young people, they like to get worked up about something. They like to push back. So, it's kind of controlled opposition in that sense. Instead of people saying, okay, we're going to push back against war. We're going to push back against the military industrial complex. We're going to push back against pollution, which does affect us. We're going to push back against GMO.
Pollution anymore.
Sorry. Instead now we're going to push back against CO2, which is what we're all made of. So, I mean, you really think of it, and it's got such an elitist, depopulation, eugenicist component. Yeah, we just need to get rid of all the people. And I've actually heard young people say that. Yeah, well, there's too many people, which comes right out of Kissinger and his 1970s report. Anyone want to talk about that a little bit?
Kissinger, Club of Rome, all of them, this is their obsession, is that what excites these people is radical depopulation. And these quotes aren't even hidden. You can find them out in the open. I heard Dane Wigington bring up that Zygmunt, I can't say that name, Brzezinski had said, and here's the quote, it's easier to kill, wait a minute, it's easier to kill 1 million people than to control them. That's like an approximate.
Wow.
Oh, I see.
So they speak about, they've been speaking about killing off the majority of the Earth's population in order to save the planet for a very long time. Sometimes it's euphemistic, sometimes it's right out in the open. We should not be confused about this. That's what so-called climate change, that agenda is about. That's what HIV/AIDS was about. That's what COVID is about. They're all the same. And you lift the hood, and under the hood is depopulation. And that's who these people are.
Well, depopulation is so pretty. Why don't we they are trying to kill us. Point blank, they are trying to kill us.
Yes, you're right. It sounds a little so faintly pseudoscientific to say depopulation. Yeah, genocide. Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, I've read some analysts who said that actually the Earth can tolerate a lot more people than we have. They make it seem like we've reached a tipping point as far as global population. But other studies that I've read emphasize that, or laid out that the Earth can actually tolerate a lot more people. I mean, some of it has to do with the lifestyle of people in the Western countries who consume so much of the Earth's resources, and if we lived a more modest lifestyle, that would improve things. But even as it stands, it's not. Overpopulation is really not the problem. It's really more our relations and the power inequalities and economic inequalities.
I mean, these are psychological terror operations. Several years ago, I wrote a little bit about the Thunberg family in Sweden. I grew up in Sweden, as you know. So I kind of went through the wormhole of Google into like Swedish Google to learn a little more about this family. And Americans don't realize this, but I want to say this as gently as I can, but Greta Thunberg was suffering from advanced, her autism is one thing, but she was in a state of advanced psychological despair, let's call it. She had what's called selective mutism, where she would not speak. She wouldn't speak, she wouldn't communicate, she wouldn't eat. And the whole family was terrorized by this. So they had this big like chart, this board on the wall. And the parents were so desperate to get, like, she was controlling everything, refusing to eat. And if she had like 2 little pieces of pasta or something, they put it on this chart. Total insanity. She then, once the whole thing happened, and I believe they put her there, that original protest, and then they created this, international icon, this whole phenomenon. Her mother is actually a very gifted soprano opera singer, or was. The mother comes back from a tour in Japan and is confronted in the kitchen by Greta and the father. And Greta tells the mother, your career is over. Because of climate change, you can't fly anymore. And the mother weepingly kind of falls down and apologizes to her saintly daughter, or thanks her for being so much more pure than she is, right? And she does terminate her career. It was a serious career. She was an international opera singer. Like this, do you see what I'm saying? It's all madness, this stuff. There's
can you maybe, since we have you, can you explain briefly for the layperson what you found about the HIV/AIDS and how that was manipulated? Because a lot of people really don't understand that very well.
That's the whole show.
I know, but
I'll try to do that. Thank you, Jayme. It's a good training exercise for me. I'm going to try to do it very briefly.
Yeah.
HIV/AIDS was launched in 1984 by corrupt, discredited scientist Robert Gallo, and he posited in front of the world's press that in his lab they'd found the virus that caused AIDS. He called it HIV. The world's press asked for no evidence, no proof, no Koch's postulates, it just went out by press, really, mass persuasion. Within 24 hours, you were a crazy person. They actually called it HIV, the virus thought to cause AIDS. They didn't even have a third of the samples that tested positive for this thing they were saying was the cause. So the standard before that day had been, you have to have 100% correlation to even get out the front gate with saying that a pathogen causes a disease. Yeah, and this is called Koch's postulates. There are 4 of them. These guys had none of it, but it was like the dawning moment of, because we said so. And the real scientists, and this is who I interviewed starting in the late 1980s, or in 1987, the real scientists thought it was so ludicrous they didn't even attend the press conference. A retrovirus is going to wipe out immune system cells? That's crazy. They all knew retroviruses didn't do anything. Pussycat virus never infect or kill any cells. They were transport molecules that they would send genetic particles around. They were like so benign. Everybody agreed. So here again, it always is the people pulling the strings on mass mind terrorism. So because everybody had been terrorized through the media about the gay cancer, the mystery disease, and they had seeded the idea that it was spreading, infectious. Fauci was out there saying toilet seed and salad leaf, and mothers didn't want to hug their gay sons, or they would throw the plates out after dinner. All the horrible things that went on. I don't know if you guys remember any of this, but it was exactly like what we went through with COVID, but in a different way. Horrifying things where people were severely bullied, attacked, stigmatized, cast out, which is where they're rubbing their hands, right? Like, oh, good, we're breaking down families, we're breaking down bonds, we're turning people against each other. But it was very woke, because it was very clear what you couldn't say. You couldn't say, well, is there something that these very sexually active gay men in the big cities are doing that's different from us? No, how dare you? You're homophobic. So this is what I said to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in his book about Fauci, the thing to understand about this cabal, Gallo, Fauci, these AIDS guys, is they're the ones who locked in woke with American science. And the classical scientists are standing at the sidelines aghast. How could you possibly call that science? Because they don't understand this new revolution that's come in, which is woke. It's like rock, paper, scissors. Woke eclipses all science, whether it's climate science, biological science with HIV, AIDS. And by the time you get to COVID, there's not even an attempt at science or causation models. You tell me who created the causation model for saying that an entity that they never had, even when they made the PCR test, SARS-CoV-2 caused COVID-19. It came out of computers. It was computers in China. It's all in silico now, right? So this is where everything is going, is like no more scientists, no more scientific thesis, no more scientific proof. That's the old classical world gone. Now it's synthetic. It's like a world where we're going to tell you what the crisis is going to be because it's based on what our grand schemes and plans are to kill you all.
And with the AIDS, but I mean, people died of AIDS. So what was that?
There was a syndrome, a toxicological multifactorial syndrome called AIDS that was, and I do think now, all these years later, I think that the hepatitis B vaccine program that went out to gay men had something to do with it. So I think that might have been the trigger. But overall, all the arrows point to multiple toxic assaults, primarily poppers, which were used in the bathhouses to relax anal muscles to facilitate receptive anal sex, caused pneumonia and the specific kind of pneumonia that was turning up, and Kaposi sarcoma in mice. So the CDC originally said, oh, we think that AIDS is, that's why they called it acquired immune deficiency syndrome. You had to acquire it. It wasn't infectious immune deficiency syndrome. It's not infectious. It's not sexually transmissible. And because I said I would keep it short, if they were correct, if HIV AIDS were correct, if the theory were correct, then everybody in the circle of a Bill Clinton, a P. Diddy, a Mick Jagger, the list goes on, would be dead because it was supposed to spread through sex. It didn't. A lot of people died, and a lot of people died from the drugs. They tested positive. They got afraid. They went and got tested. They tested positive. They were healthy. They went on the immensely toxic drugs, especially the first one, AZT, but also cousin drugs, DDI, D4T. DDI killed Keith Haring. And then they turn skeletal and green and orange and they die. And the media shows those pictures and people conflate, virus, I could catch it from a toilet seat. With that, illness comes from toxic assault and malnutrition.
The other thing, just to point out, is with the, I always get the initials wrong, AZT, ATZ. AZT is very much similar to the COVID narrative and remdesivir. They were accusing COVID of causing organ failure when the bottle of remdesivir says it causes organ failure. So if you give remdesivir to someone, they're going to have organ failure. So then they're saying, oh, it's not from remdesivir, it's from the COVID.
It's from our bugaboo. It's from our spectral enemy. It's from our ghost. It's from our monster in the closet under the bed. They create monsters and they've trained the public not to, again, the guilt trip we were talking about. We're not allowed to ask, how did these floodwaters, the Guadalupe River, how does it rise? What did you say? 26 feet and
I think it was 26 feet and something like 16 inches. Let me go back to that.
In a matter of minutes. That's weird. So it's always, you're not allowed to ask how or why anything happens. So Jayme, back to your point, didn't people die? Absolutely. People die. Before there was AZT, there were gay men in the big cities dying. I can't say every last one, but the basic epidemiology is that they were receptive. You know, gay men, it's tops and bottoms. They were receptive. So that would mean that they were taking definitely a lot of drugs to facilitate that. There's a lot of stuff I could get into it's a little difficult to talk about, but it has to do with what exactly went down in the bathhouses. What if you didn't just take poppers and you didn't just take cocaine and all these other drugs, you also weren't eating, weren't sleeping, were taking antibiotics on a regular basis. Like there were bowls of antibiotics in these clubs. And then there's also things like douching, super not easy to talk about either, but that became a thing in the pretty much late 70s, like when the S&M aspects of this whole subculture grew. And it was just a matter of, well, just it sounds like a good idea, hygiene connected to very intense, very focused sex. But it turns out that by itself can create catastrophic events.
We know that for women too.
You're removing the whole flora, right? So like there's all these roads that lead to immune collapse. And did we ever come up with exactly what the cause? No, but we know for sure, I can say, and I devoted decades to this, there's no way it was Gallows HIV, simply no way, which was never purified or isolated anyway. So it's not even an entity. But even if you give them that, okay, you have some kind of sequenced entity, absolutely no way. I know so many people in my own life, because I've been in this thing for decades, who have been HIV positive for 15, 20, 25, 30 years. They've forgotten about it. They're fine.
They're perfectly healthy, yeah.
Perfectly healthy.
So what did they test positive for on that test?
That's the gazillion-dollar question. The test crossed to the so-called HIV test says on the insert, I can show you guys this. This test cannot prove the presence or absence of HIV because they're covering themselves. It was designed to, it cross-reacts with a number of antigens and proteins. If you're pregnant, you can very easily set off a test positive. If you just had a series, you're traveling to Africa and you have some yellow fever vaccine, there's there's a woman named Christine Johnson decades ago. She wrote this seminal piece, a comprehensive list at the time of everything that could cause a false HIV positive test and cause a cross reaction. But every time we brought this stuff up, we were the horrible people, the crazy homophobic, they hated us so much, and they directed so much hatred at us. I mean, I witnessed people be bullied to death. I was almost bullied to death.
We saw that again with the COVID situation. If anyone asked any questions, they were marginalized, deplatformed, and all kinds of stuff. But just 2 points of information. You had wanted me to remind about how much rain fell. It was 18 inches, over 18 inches. And it surged, the Guadalupe River surged 26 feet in under an hour. I mean, that is major.
What is that? There's nothing recognizable. Now, I will say, I want to know what you guys think. I didn't feel like they pushed the climate change narrative as much as I expected them to. So I'm not sure what's going on with that. I would have expected them to really, really ramp it up, but it could be that I missed it.
The other thing I just wanted to spend a couple of seconds on is, this climate change narrative all comes down to less for us, more for them. And, our travel is restricted. We're not supposed to do this. We're not supposed to breathe. We're not supposed to exhale because we exhale carbon dioxide. And, so we're not permitted to do that. So, it's terrible. But the, ruling elite are just jet setting around like there's no problem. And with Greta, Jeremy and I remarked about this when I wrote this article in Covert Action magazine a few years back on climate change. Greta said nothing about the Nord Stream pipelines. She was silent on any military application of anything that causes any global stress or pollution. So
Well, the
so she's very
environmental movement
selective.
in general, yeah, I think Gloria and I have discussed how the environmental movement shifted from broad concern about clean air, clean rivers, to a singular focus on climate change. And yeah, that was one of the worst environmental disasters caused by the U.S. military and Ukraine or CIA or whoever was behind it. And these environmental groups were silent. Most of the left was silent about the Nord Stream pipeline because a lot of the left has bought into the Russophobia. Um,
Exactly. What I see as the big picture is that, so after World War II, as we know, the chemical industries, and as a lot of the coming out of Germany and so forth, like the ones who made thalidomide, that was a German company led by bona fide Nazis, called okay, right now the name is escaping me. That's really bizarre because I wrote a whole chapter about it in my last book. In any case, chemicals, right? Better live, and then they go in. It goes into everything: food, water, medicine, chemicals, and then we have this period in America of Americans just can't get enough chemicals. Everybody loves the chemicals. Then you have an environment like the Rachel Carson era, and everyone rightly and understand discovers that chemicals are this horrendous, and it's like it's normal, right? And then now we're in this era where it's almost as though, you're calling them the left, Jeremy, I would call them the global elites. I just sometimes call them the pod people, and the pod people seems like they've never met a chemical they could not love, all the way up to and through the deadly mRNA shots. They just love chemicals. So the whole thing has flipped, but they're into these religions, these sort of druidic religions of like, it has to be something non-tangible for these people. It's out there. If you don't believe in it, you're crazy and bad. No, we don't have to prove it. You're just, scum. But you show them something tangible like RFK Jr.'s, but mercury. First it was in the fish, I fought that, and now it's in the vaccines, and you're saying I'm Hitler, because anything tangible, they don't like that. They like these big, abstract, invisible clouds of dread and terror that they form new religions around, and then into those religions, enormous apparatus of money laundering on an unimaginable scale.
Well, the thing is, if you drill down and you identify a particular thing that's bad, you can fight it. As long as you keep everything nebulous and huge, you feel disempowered. You just don't have the
And that's
agency
what
to
they want.
make a change. So I think I think what you're describing is really an intentional psyop on the public. Additionally, you
yeah,
had mentioned about, and we talk about this a lot on the shows. I just wanted to give a second on it. The destruction of the family, the nuclear family, the extended family, the relationship between children and their parents, and how a lot of these ops, like the AIDS op, the COVID op, don't see your grandmother, you'll kill her. These things that spread fear and isolation, or, the trans narratives where, you have influencers telling children, um, don't talk to your parents, isolate your parents, things like that. You get all these messages. And I just wanted to emphasize the reason for this is that we are more vulnerable when we are isolated, and we are stronger when we have strong familial ties, when we have strong community ties, when we have strong national ties. And this is one of the things that they want to take away because it makes us easier to manipulate. Does anyone want to speak on that?
You sound what you just said, I couldn't agree more, but those are official conservative talking points. You sound, they would, that those are conservative talking, but now the conservatives have also flipped, so everything is always flipping. But yeah, you're exactly right. And that's the heart of the matter, what you just said. That is the heart of the matter. They want us atomized and splintered, alone, demoralized, if not suicidal. In Canada, the best is to become suicidal, and the government, literally, no exaggeration, says, we can kill you. Just sign right here. I'm not exactly.
I'm so
And
sorry.
by
I'm
left,
so
I mean,
sorry. I
I
got,
think we may be out of time. I was just going to explain by left. I mean, groups that traditionally were anti-war, promote more social democratic economic program. You find they're often the most intolerant on these kind of issues we're discussing. And if you go on like the World Socialist website, which I read, they have some good articles on like U.S. foreign policy interventions and their pernicious influence around the world. So I read a lot of good articles there, but then they have articles just like viciously attacking RFK, and there's no pretense of any objectivity. It's just this, vicious terms, the way they attack him. And I mean, I do understand that's why the Soviet Union, failed, because they always presented things in black and white, and their enemy was always evil, and that's how they could justify the gulags and stuff like that. So there may be some connection there, but I don't know. It's just like, yeah, that whether it's the show Gloria and I, we're not allowed to say, or Counterpunch, these websites that are associated with the left, critiques of U.S. foreign policy, more left wing.
shows that are on WBAI, we can't criticize. We have to just say, it's like Voldemort, the show that cannot be named.
That have the most intolerant position and do exactly what you're saying. It's like some like psychological trance. The people you mentioned, RFK Jr., you can't have any rational discussion. He's the devil incarnate, and you bring up COVID, and yeah, they're the most gung-ho advocates of lockdown, and it seems to be at odds with the principle of a movement for a group that's associated with more peace-oriented policies or fair economy. I mean, the left I associate more as a leftist because it's for a fair economy, higher tax on the rich, for better social programs. So I consider myself a compassionate person. So something like the lockdown really offended me. But others on the left, it's the opposite, and they demonize anybody who goes against them, and they viciously attack them. They don't want to debate the matter.
The new left.
Jayme, our engineer is going to shoot me.
Because our show used to be called Left on Left for that reason. We critique this lockdown left, or obsessed with climate change.
Let's talk about the left. If we maybe a future show on, because I want to talk about the left and their mania for what they think is infectious disease and what they think is public health, and their love of chemicals.
Well, Celia, nothing would make us more happy if you could be a repeat guest.
I'd love
so please, I don't know if you have your book handy, Celia, but if you do, please hold it up and show us your book, and let our and read the title and where our audience can find it, so that you can get some cash. And you also have a Substack, and people can donate to your Substack too if they'd like. But I can't talk too much about that, or I'll get in trouble with that too with WBAI.
My latest book, which is not really, it's called Sacrifice, and this is about the atrocities that went down when they gave the COVID shots to pregnant women, and co-written with Dr. James Thorpe. It's called Sacrifice. My book, it's right here. Hold on, I got it. Don't be mad.
Just Jayme has to edit this down.
It's called Serious Adverse Events and Uncensored History of AIDS. My Substack is celiafarber.substack.com. It's called The Truth Barrier.
Thank you. Well, I just want to say this too, because we have to be very careful. The opinions you hear are ours and our guest, not those of WBAI, the Pacifica Foundation, or the Progressive Radio Network. We're so hot that we have to do 2 warnings, 2 disclaimers. Well, that wraps up our show for today. This is Uncontrolled Opposition. I'm Gloria Guillo, joined here today by Professor Jeremy Kuzmarov and Celia Farber. Remember to like and share our broadcast. Your kind support keeps us going. Thanks for tuning in. Hope to see you next week.
Okay. Okay.
Sorry,
Jayme,
Mr.
you
Jayme.
might have to
So-
cut out a few minutes.
Mr. CheeseSlice, sorry.
We could keep talking. That was a fantastic show because I missed the 10-minute warning because I was just engaged, and
Yay.
that hour
good.
flew by.
Yeah, thanks,
did.
Julia.
It
I
did.
learned
I
a
blinked.
lot from you. So thanks so much.
So
I feel
I
like
mean, I don't
this is a
mean
week
you don't need
on
to stop. I mean, if you guys can keep talking and you have things to
Well,
keep
we don't
going.
want to
I
go on
actually
too
have
much
to go.
longer.
I
You
love
all
you
have
too.
to go. Yeah.
But
But I
we'll get
have
you
to
back.
come
We'll
on.
figure out a date and bring you back if we can.
I want to talk about the left. 'cause
Yeah,
I was-
that's an important issue.
When
'Cause-
I was the first shot against me, when my whole career was destroyed after my Harper's article 2006 about Fauci's crimes came from the Nation.
yeah, and
Kicked off the whole pogrom against me. It was
yeah, that's sad, 'cause,
only
I
the
mean,
left that gave me
yeah,
trouble.
I read The Nation, and I mean, they were at the forefront, against the Iraq War, CIA torture, and I mean, they advocate, for some, economic policy that I would support, more of a social democratic vision. So I've always subscribed to The Nation, but yeah, it's very disturbing the way they behave, and they use the most vicious terms to attack people, and that's really disturbing.
We've had a show, and on our show, we discussed this fake separation between the left and the right when it comes to analysis. So the left will be considered anti-imperialist. They'll look at U.S. intervention with corporations, which are basically taking away any living wage for workers in other countries. And if the workers object, the CIA comes in and mows them all down. This is pretty much well known in Central America, South America, and
Yeah.
Asia, what the United States will do to defend its corporations and its access to minerals and human
Yeah, so they
resources.
produce good
So,
analysis about
so that
So,
that
yeah.
they're allowed to do. And then on the right, you have the truther movement, okay, which will look at 9/11. It'll look at the COVID narrative. It'll look at anything that restricts our movement and our integrity without being surveilled. So they keep these two movements way apart. So if ever you talk to a truther and you say, well, Nicaragua is a sovereign country, we shouldn't be interfering there. They'll go, oh no, they're communist, they're socialist. And they don't even know what those terms mean. They've been propagandized to
Yeah.
associate these things.
Yeah.
And
those people are more open-minded because I live in Oklahoma, and at first I was worried about moving here, but then I found people so open about these kind of topics we're discussing today, or whether it's the COVID or 9/11. I have conversation with people all the time, very open, and then I find out they're conservative, or get into something else, and they say something that makes no sense, like
but that
then
goes
when
under
it
the
comes to my
truther
liberal
banner.
friends, who are good together on like anti-war stuff, but when it comes to these topics, they're vicious, attacking people, and then you can't have any discussion with them about whether 9/11, COVID, what we're discussing today.
I
And they're
think
not.
There are two camps.
The elites, the elite media, the hot, left, the foundation left, those people are all, they live in dread of conspiracy theories, what they call conspiracy theories. That's all they know.
I mean, they position themselves liberals, and they're all unified against Trump. But yeah, if you bring up any of these topics, they'll ridicule and blacklist you. And they use the tactics of McCarthyism, like on steroids, which is rather ironic because they'll lament, how people on the left were mistreated under McCarthyism. And even this woman who did a book, I tried to engage with her because she wrote a definitive study on McCarthyism. I taught the history of the Cold War, and it's a very good book on McCarthyism. And then she's saying like, oh, McCarthyism is worse today, but she was only focused on like conservatives. And I was like, well, what about how they label people conspiracy theorists and blacklist them? And I gave the example. There's a guy who was fired at New York College because he started discussing RFK, or brought up his book in his class, and they fired him. And she like just like didn't respond to me and cut off the conversation. And I also discussed the Russia stuff. He's like, why don't you talk about how they're so Russophobic today? And it's only about how conservatives are attacked, and only about the Israel Gaza. They seize on that, and any case where an academic who supported or was critical of Israel and got mistreated, they seize on that case, but they'll never pick a case where a faculty who is critical of U.S. policy toward Russia, or who is bringing up, trying to investigate the 9/11 or the assassinations or stuff we're discussing, and how those professors are mistreated and blacklisted. They won't even mention that.
Well, Noam Chomsky was also famously dismissive of, in fact, Julian Assange, I understand, was also very dismissive of 9/11. So that's Chomsky, Julian Assange, Alexander Coburn. There's a lot of left icons who are extreme. And I think the thing that's off-putting to them is the conspiracy stench.
Well, the other thing is, are they really who they are, or are they controlled opposition? And then maybe they don't even realize they're controlled opposition. They're just fed certain information, and they're told, don't talk about this or you're canceled.
Well, it may be self-censored. They realize they can lose credibility in certain circles if they enter that arena, so they just stay out of it.
Yep. But I've had many, many years to think about this, because Spin Magazine, where I did my original reporting about the HIV dissidents, you have to call a rock and roll magazine left of center, right? And it was liberal left of center, rock and roll ethos, a rock magazine, literally. And the whole staff, they just loathed the AIDS column. They tried many times to get it stopped, to stop me, to stop the publisher, Bob Guiccioni Jr. And I was so distraught. And I said, okay, what is it that you guys love about, I don't know, the National Cancer Institute, love or trust, let's say, about the NCI and Bob Gallo and Anthony Fauci and all this money coming in and all these NGOs and all these people going all over Africa, doing all kinds of things to the African people. Like what would make you in your 20s at a rock magazine? What would make you trust those people? I don't understand.
Yeah, I know. You don't trust when it comes to a war, you can see through the lies they're selling a war, but somehow they think these people are all moral beacons, and you dare criticize it, and you're blacklisted. Yeah, I've had that. Yeah.
People are just wired somehow. They know what to react to. Like, that makes me mad, and that's crazy, and get that away from me. And it's. But what I would like to talk about in the future is, what is it about the so-called, left? Like, we'll define which left's morphing into what. What do we mean? But by and large, the left, they can't deal with real biology.
Well, I think what we've also
human body reacts to poison.
Well, I think what we've also seen, are the paper trails, or the where the money goes, and we find a lot of Soros and Gates and Pritzker funding in a lot of these left things. So there's a paycheck in it. It's not so pure. There's paychecks in it, and then we're also seeing a lot of I always forget this guy's name. Can anyone remember his name? Who funds Code Pink, Answer Coalition? Roy Neville Singham. He's like Soros light. And so one of the masks that they wear is that all these grassroots independent groups are coming to the same conclusion. So if all of these grassroots groups can come to the same conclusion, then it must be true. When the fact is, all of these grassroots groups are funded by the same people. So it's not this, this truth, this, this gestalt, this awakening all at the same time. No, it's where the money goes. So if all the money goes here and there, and the people who control the purse say, this is what you do and this is what you don't do. That's what happens. Hey, you got a visitor.
Louis, do you think we've talked long enough? Is that what you think?
Yeah, we better get going.
He wants mommy.
That's a very good discussion.
Louis, by the way, he's named after the late, great Louis Lapham, editor of Harper's, who was my editor on that piece.
Oh, yeah. Great.
Louis is named after. Okay, Louis, I think you're hungry. Is that what's going on?
Well, I'll say that the propaganda for the anti-left propaganda is super strong. And this is one reason I hate Twitter, because I'll go on there and sometimes I'll just get sucked into those threads and it's just tremendous amount of anti-left propaganda. And it is extremely effective. They've got these very concise arguments that seem like it's just common sense. No, duh. Yeah, obviously that's true. And you want to push back, but there's so much of it. And everybody in those comment sections are just completely bought into all of it.
Yeah.
And it's like, we need our own think tanks just to deconstruct
we
that.
need more definition of terms. What do you mean left? What do you mean?
I gotta say something on this one. Okay. I did a lot of research. I wrote an article in 2018 on Facebook and Google and all of that stuff. And what I came up with is that you had a lot of military. Okay. You had guys in uniform, sitting behind a desk with something called sock puppets. Okay. And a sock puppet are these different profiles that aren't real. And they're AI profiles, but they also have a human that's kind of interacting with these. So it makes it seem more real. And what we've really found out is that with these sock puppets and basically humans believe in this cacophony of sound and this, there's 40 people on supporting this particular position, so this position must be right. And Google is the same thing. They'll put the prevailing narrative up top, and then if you want to find an alternate opinion, it's on page 10 of Google. So the prominence of an idea and the frequency of people responding to the idea is more psyop. So Jayme, what you're coming against may be some authentic people who believe that, but it might also be some kid in his underwear with a, Navy banner who's like 18 sitting at a computer manning, 50 sock puppets. And
it's so well constructed and the arguments are tight. I mean, it's obviously coming from, it's been workshopped. It's been coming out of think tanks to have these like arguments that seem very airtight on the surface, but they ignore a lot of facts. But they're so quick sound bites, just like anti-socialist, anti-communist, anti-anything left. And it's just very good propaganda. And what I think when we talk about left and right, we got to distinguish, let people know there's a lot of different, the left is a very big place. And there's a lot of different ideologies on the left and they don't all agree. That's why you can't get everybody on the same page. But then you got the Democrats who are the left. But when you look at their voting record, there's almost nothing left about their voting record. And so what they really are the left-wing gatekeepers. You got this group who decides what is okay and not okay for the left to talk about. It's essentially a right-wing group that's saying, okay, you lefties, you can talk about this because we said so, but you don't get to talk about that other stuff. And then they pick the worst aspects of some of left-wing politics and amplify that to make everybody hate left-wing politics because they are the left. They're just the left most of two right-wing parties, but they're the left. And it just discredits everything else. So then you got a lot of people who are much further to the left than the Democrats, but anything to the left of the Democrats is far left. But if the Democrats are a right-wing party, then that means the entire left wing of the political spectrum is far left. And it's just, so this is the kind of thing we got to really deconstruct. And they've also conflated authoritarianism and libertarianism. So if you've seen the political compass, that's like the vertical scale, and then the left and right is on the horizontal scale. Well, they've conflated authoritarianism with the left and libertarianism with the right. So everything about that's anti-authoritarian is right-wing. That's good. But all the authoritarianism, they identify it correctly as bad, but they associate all that with the left. which the fact is authoritarianism can affect any kind of government, left or right. And the same thing with libertarianism. And that's the kind of stuff we got to break through when we try to talk to people about left and right. What is the left? I mean, we could talk all day just identifying about the different factions of the left.
I think we have to get away from left and right, which is why
I
we
agree.
changed our name. And we changed our name because our audience wrote in and they kept complaining that we were called left on left. They said, oh, that's dead. You know, you guys are, you know, old fashioned, get rid of it. And, you know, we listen. So we listen to our audience. And
I agree with that. We have a lot of dead words floating around that we're still using. They're dead words.
It's left. I mean, it's right and wrong.
Right. And
It's
they're
not left and
attacking
right,
these
it's
ideas.
right and wrong.
They're really attacking these ideas that are traditionally associated with the left. And a lot of people on the right actually agree with them when you don't frame them in the left-right construct.
Well,
because a lot of conservatism comes from left-wing social ideas. So they call it Americanism or traditional American values. And they'll agree with it when you take out the rhetoric, the left-right rhetoric, they'll agree with you all day. But as soon as you start mentioning some of those buzzwords, it just triggers them, and then they just become defensive and they won't talk to you about it anymore. But we gotta find a way to break through that. I think we need our own think tanks and workshop our own counter stuff. There's some good stuff out there, but it's all disorganized. It's all just individuals trying to attack this thing that has been mobilized. It's an organized machine that has been deployed on the population to attack ideas that would be good for improving the lives of people in Western cultures. And what we do is we just bend the knee to all these perverse incentive structures that leads to us having the society that we now have. And you know, I don't know. I have a lot of ideas in my head that's been floating around to try to tackle it, but it's such a big problem.
We actually have a think tank meeting tonight at Green Renaissance Sovereign Rights Movement. It's at 8:30 p.m. And we kick around all this stuff. So we do have like a little think tank. And actually, a lot of what comes out of here comes from this group of people who, you know, basically look through everything and then forward what they feel is very important, very similar to what Celia does. She looks at everything and then she brings to the light, you know, what we should focus on. And it's a very important thing. I mean, we need to have people who actually, you know, put these things together. But Celia, I was watching Tulsi Gabbard. They had a video on, and Tulsi Gabbard is talking about, you know, all this fake stuff. And she gets down to Clinton. And she's talking about how Clinton was these are in the documents, how Clinton was on all of these anxiety medications, that she was heavily drugged, and that she has this explosive, violent personality. She's talking about Hillary Clinton, and she was revealing all the records. Not Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard.
Are these new documents? Because I searched the Clintons, and I lived near Arkansas.
This is all new.
I interviewed a lot of people and read a lot of books, you know, obscure books.
This is all new.
Well, no, that's what people who worked with Hillary said, that she would blow up in front of the staff, like in Arkansas.
Yeah,
you know,
famous.
She was heavily medicated.
And there's some new videos that I've seen pop up.
Who said this? I'm confused.
These are new documents, Gloria? Or?
Yeah, these are documents that Tulsi Gabbard is releasing. These are emails and things like that. She's releasing them, and she was going through. I'll send you guys the link. I'll send you guys the link.
These documents, yeah.
It was. I mean, I'm trying to make breakfast, and I'm like, oh boy.
Anyway, I gotta run. Wow. So thank you, Celia.
I'll send it to you.
A lot.
I have so much fun with you. We'll do it.
Yeah, we'll do it again. Yeah.
Okay.
So thanks, everybody. And you guys can jump off if you need to. I just wanted to share Gloria's Covert Action Magazine article because I didn't get to flash that on the screen during the show.
Okay.
But she did talk about how fossil fuel industry came to love climate change. And we talked about that during the show.
Yeah, just scroll down a little bit. Scroll down just a little bit. It's the two lines under it that I like everyone to focus on. Thank you, Jayme. Just go up a little bit higher. Yeah. This is basically, you don't have to read the article. All you have to do is read these two sentences. And once you read these two sentences, the article painstakingly supports this. So for our listening audience who don't have video, has carbon taxation become an expedient way to redistribute wealth, cover up environmental crimes, promote hazardous energy policies, and control the working class in developing nations? Does the threat of climate change misdirect the anti-war movement? And there's I don't know, I have 5,000 or 6,000 words that back that up. So if you got nothing to do, take a look at it. So,
wow.
Thank you, Jayme.
Dead on. I'm going to read this. That's amazing. So
and the links for the articles we shared during the show are in the description of the show on YouTube and Rumble. Also, just I think we got to wrap up. But one thing during the show, I got heartbreaking news. Hulk Hogan has passed away, and this happened while we were live. So for 80s icon, I mean, I know in the 2000s he had a different kind of career, but 80s and 90s icon, hero to many. He was part of that 80s Americanism, greed is good era.
I do have to go, but I just want to say one thing. I don't know if you know this about him. This is a super as a part of the whole history that's always interested me. Do you know about the lawsuit against Gawker magazine that put Gawker out? That was Hulk Hogan, and it was funded by Peter Thiel. And and now I can't make heads or tails of that whole thing. But at the time, I was very for it because I couldn't stand Gawker. I thought it was a horrible bully magazine periodical.
Yeah, it was. I was cheering that on as well. But we had the coming three. So we had Malcolm Jamal Warner died a couple days ago. Ozzy Osbourne died yesterday.
Ozzy Osbourne influenced my band Ringmaster heavily.
Yeah,
I grew up with Ozzy.
Me too. I was rocking out. I was listening to all the old songs, but then I was also kind of thrown by the media coverage because it was almost like he had been Yahoo News said Ozzy Osbourne loved and mourned for his unbelievable influence. And I thought, wait a minute, come on.
Remember he had the TV show about 15 years ago, 20 years ago.
That was a disgrace. It was an embarrassment.
Positive influence. I mean, they talked about him like he was Nelson Mandela. I just thought weird.
He's a rock star. He was your traditional type of rock
I did
star.
love the song War Pigs.
Rock stars into tools for the globalists and for the royal family and for the crown and for the, he was, as far as I can't say, I'm sure he was pro-vax on COVID. He was a Zionist, he was like all those guys in KISS,
please. Kiss was not as popular as Black Sabbath, but I think they got more popular. War Pigs was a great song. Hands off to War Pigs. It was a masterpiece. Are you familiar with War Pigs?
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, it's a masterpiece.
I know pretty much every single Black Sabbath song.
I think Kiss got more popular maybe 20, 30 years after their prime. Because the guys in makeup and they were still wearing makeup in their 50s and 60s, and I think that was people just thought that was kind of crazy and awesome.
Well, I think there's an untold story there because I'll just be the resident total paranoid who can never really explain what she means. But there's, I think that these bands, these events, they serve dual purposes or multiple purposes. They're designed for social engineering, probably espionage. All kinds of things. I'm not saying
they did that with gangster rap in the 90s.
Well, you're right. I mean, there's all that stuff in the what was the book? Committee of 300. Is that the book? I always forget the name of the book. But
the one of the engineer and also the producer. I might be getting it a little bit mixed up, but they were trafficking in LSD for the CIA, and one of those people I just mentioned is the father of Courtney Love, and she went to London with 1,000 tabs of LSD. All these people are wired, like the tentacles of the so-called deep state, of the tentacles of, let's just say, hidden military agendas, transnational military agendas, Tavistock and social engineering, all these things are all through rock and roll, right? All through rock and roll.
It broke my heart. I mean, so many things I'm able to deal with that, like, as we go through life, all of us, you think you have a handle on something, and then they pull the rug out from under you, and then they pull the rug, and you're like, okay, I guess that's not true anymore. Okay, I guess that's not true anymore. All right, I believe this. It's gone. But rock hurt.
Rock Williams, the work on the Beatles, the whole Beatles thing, Sage of Quay. Do you know his channel? Okay, we'll talk.
No, but you
I
turned
think they
me
do it
on
with
to that
everything.
Courtney Love interview, and I loved that. Not interview,
Oh,
but
did
that.
you watch that?
Yeah,
Wasn't
I watched
it?
it. It was fantastic. Fantastic.
They do it with that. They do it with sports too. Like
Yes.
anything that becomes super popular, they co-opt it and try to take it and then use it to, because they see it as a vehicle for narrative management, and then they just try to use anything that becomes popular to manipulate the public. Cartoon,
Nobody
sports,
gets
music,
without agreeing to the narrative and or by way of blackmail, trauma, MK Ultra, you name it. They've all that's how the whole system runs. I know
it makes it so that things you used to love just don't hit the
once.
same way anymore.
Yeah, okay, we gotta fly. All right,
all right,
guys.
let's wrap it up. Thank you all for watching.
Okay.
Thanks, Jayme. Bye-bye.
We'll
Bye,
be back
everyone.
next week. Have a good weekend.